Hi friends, welcome to another edition of Fish Tales with Pat Roach, where I tell you a story. It might be about fishing or it might be about something else. And today I'm going to tell you one of the many stories about my good old pal, John Dunsworth, aka Mr.Lahey. Now, John Dunsworth and I spent so much time together and we developed a great friendship. You know, it was like John was really like my older brother. So he would be probably, 20 odd years older than me. But John always had my back, and which is great. And it's always nice to have someone that loves you and will help you with anything and always listen to you and give you advice. And that's the type of guy that John was. But one of the favorite things that John had was Trailer Park Boys. He just loved playing Mr. Lahey. And one of his favorite things was when he would get all of his scripts. Like we get all of our scripts for a whole season all at once. And then John would be so happy to get those scripts. He would take them and he'd always have these big, thick 3-ring binders that he would find. Like he would go to the Salvation Army or whatever, a thrift store. Yeah, that same thing. And he'd find these and he'd pick them up and then and he'd keep them. So they always had sort of they'd be used by someone else, but he didn't care. And he thought they were just as good or even better. So then he'd get his scripts, and they all had holes in them, and then he would separate them all by every episode, and he would go through all those scripts, and every single time Mr. Lahey would be there, he would highlight it and then totally highlight the whole scene, and then from there he would then start to make notes about where we might be coming from. Like if we bumped into Ricky and Julian, he'd be like, where was I right before this? So he would know that he was just came from the liquor store. So he'd be like, okay, so I'm happy that I have liquor, but I'm not too happy to see Ricky and Julian. He'd make all these little notes on the margins, and he'd help me because he was like the real actor who had been doing it for years, and all of us mostly just started. Trailer Park Boys was the first thing that we really did. So thank goodness for John, because he was the guy that would teach us things that you would really only learn in school. But he would go in and dissect all the scripts and just make sure that he knew exactly every scene, and then we would sit there and start to rehearse them. So I'd say that we were probably in like it took us 40 days, maybe 40 plus days to film a whole season of Trailer Park Boys. And Mr. and Randy, we're actors, like we were in the top 5. So we were not in as much as Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles, but we would be in like half the time, probably 50% of the time, which is very good. So 0 to 40 days, let's say you're in 20 days. So that's awesome. So when we would get to the set, we wouldn't be in every scene on that day. So there would be some downtime. So you might shoot a scene and then you'd have like a couple hours off. And then what we do is we go back. We all had our own little trailers, and John always had his own trailer, that like camper trailer, right? That he had, and he would come with it. And it would have all his stuff in it, all kinds of. He'd have his crib board in there, a big, thick dictionary, so that he could look up the meanings and spellings of words. Words were one of his favorite things, and well, of course, ashtrays, and like he went from smoking cigarettes to smoking cigars to smoking a pipe, you know it, it was just awesome. So we'd sit there in the trailer and we would then look up whatever next scenes were coming, because we had a schedule, and then we just run the dialogue and go through it. And I had my own scripts and he had his. So then after we'd run the scene, he would help me to become a better Randy. Like, do you really think Randy would be that way? How do you think Randy would be? And then he'd say to me, where are we coming from? Where did you just come from, Randy? And I'd be like, well, I just came from the playground because, someone rubbed shit all over the slide or something. He said, so you'd probably be kind of pissed off that you cleaned up a bunch of shit, right? So maybe you're not so happy here. I'm like, oh, okay. So, he really helped me with like looking in between the lines, like someday, because sometimes a frig off can be said 10 different ways, so he would help me in that regard. And then after we'd run a bunch of the scenes, then we play a game of crib or a game of rummy 500, and we were very competitive, and I'd say John and I were equally good at those games. And then after we did that, we go back and run more scenes again and do it again. And all the other trailers of all the other actors were set up all around us. So if anyone else around there happened to be in the scene, well, they would get invited, and let's practice. Let's make this good, because Trailer Park Boys is 99% scripted, 1% improv. So, and of course, John Dunsworth would always say, you need to know the script and the dialogue inside and out, because at the, you never know what you're going to be doing, because Mr.Lahey would be walking around, stumbling drunk, stumbling over lawnmowers, falling down, doing things. And if he didn't know his dialogue, and when you then have to fall over lawnmowers, it would totally mess you up, and the scene wouldn't be nearly as good. So he was a total professional. Always rehearse, would call up the director and just run ideas past the director, and just to make sure that he was on the right track. And he was just a joy to be around, and that's why everybody misses him so much, because he was an excellent human being, and always had a joke for everybody. I've never met anyone who had so many jokes, and he would tell them to other cast and crew, or he just tell the guy who's helping him pump gas, that type of thing. He just wanted to make everyone laugh, and he was a total entertainer. So there you go. There's a little story about John Dunsworth and Trailer Park Boys, and and Pat Roach too. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Woohoo!